Okay, so now I want to talk about integrating your leadership shadow. Integrating that so that you're better able to manage that darker side under stress so that it doesn't manage you. So before I talk about that, I want to talk about what it looks like. So what is an actualized achiever or an actualized affirmer or an actualized asserter? Maslow said that to the uninitiated, they are walking contradictions. Initiated meaning those who are aware of the complexity of self-actualization. If you look at the slide here, you'll see that actualized achievers are detailed and organized, and that's natural and easy for an achiever. But when you marry that with being conceptual and flexible, you begin to step into the fullness of not just going to your natural state, but also experiencing a little outside of your comfort zone. What about an actualized affirmer? Friendly and empathetic, that's easy, that's natural. But when you're friendly and courageous, when you're empathetic and candid with others, again, you begin to take on what Maslow referred to as that walking contradiction. And then finally, for an actualized asserter, confident and competitive, that's easy. That's natural for an asserter. But if you can marry confidence with humility and competitiveness with caring, you begin to step into the fullness of what it means to be an actualized asserter. So how do we integrate our shadow? Well, let's go back and define that for a moment again. Carl Jung famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, trying to be perfect, sitting up straight, always being right, that actually takes us further away from our highest potential. He once said that we should embrace that darkness and own it. Another quote from Jung, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." In other words, the greater your blind spot, the darker your shadow. And then finally, from the I Ching, "It is only when we have the courage to face things exactly as they are, without any self-deception or illusion, that a light will be developed by which the path to success may be recognized." Having the courage to face things exactly as they are, in other words, having the courage to face ourselves, the good and the bad, without any self-deception, illusion, or blaming. No longer being a victim, but owning that is that key first step in self-awareness that leads us to living and leading at our highest potential. So the shadow, integrating your leadership shadow, the instinctual negative qualities that we repress, deny, or project onto others. Carl Jung was very clear that it exists at both a personal and a collective level. The ALP further refines the personal shadow to thinking about the three leadership shadows based on the ALP framework. It's the Mr. or Mrs. Hyde to our Dr. and Jekyll. Putting on our best face at work, but what is the Mr. or Mrs. Hyde that comes out under stress? For Dr. Jekyll, it was drinking the potion. So I often encourage my clients to identify, what is your potion? What are those triggers that cause that transformation in you? And again, thinking about it from the perspective of the leadership shadows identified by the ALP. It's important that we really take this to heart because of Viktor Frankl's notion of paradoxical intent, which simply stated as this: the more you fear something, the more likely you are to experience it. It's the tragic irony of the human condition. Think about that. The very thing we're trying to avoid, we're more likely to experience if we allow fear and reactivity to drive our behavior. Carl Jung famously said it a different way. We meet our destiny on the road we took to avoid it. With paradoxical intent, we find irrational thoughts, unfounded fears, and self-defeating behaviors. And it's that cycle and that pattern that reoccurs throughout our life until we have the courage to face it and to break it. So what did Maslow say? Perhaps the most important thing he talked about as far as growing our self-actualization was to begin seeing life as a series of choices. Make the courageous choice to get out of your comfort zone, to do something that isn't natural but will help you grow and develop. And it's different for each of the three styles. For an achiever, my experience has been this: letting go of perfection will change your life. I'm not saying you shouldn't be ambitious. I'm not saying you shouldn't have high standards, but life can be pretty muddy. It's not always perfect. Letting go of perfection, or perhaps redefining perfection as the effort and the practice you put into something and letting go of the outcome a bit. For affirmers, leaning into discomfort means letting go of seeking the approval of everyone. You're not going to make everyone happy. Some people just aren't going to like you, or they're not going to agree with you. And when affirmers stop trying to win everyone's approval, they reclaim their own sense of purpose, really liberating themselves to live their life for themselves as opposed to trying to accommodate and please others. And then finally, for asserters, it's letting go of total control. Asserters like to be in charge, but when you let go of that need to always be right and always be in control, you actually create some space for some magic. We don't become enlightened by pretending to be perfect. We become enlightened when we have the courage to acknowledge and embrace our darkness. That's the key first step along this path. The final slide is the 9 Attributes Resource Development Guide. This guide has been created to help you in your journey by focusing on the attributes or characteristics that would serve you the most. You may want to start by looking at your lowest scoring attribute and identifying the book, the article, and the online program or TED Talk that can support you in this area. For example, as an asserter, often we deal with trust issues. We tend to be fairly skeptical, and yet trusting others and trusting ourselves actually allows us to release our full potential and transform not only our lives, but the lives of others that work with us and live with us. So you may want to go across trust there and look at the book, the article, and the video program there to help you in this attribute. Please utilize this resource guide as you continue on your path and journey to developing your highest potential.